This video will be me working the quick check that involved compound and absolute value inequalities. So on question number 1, I have to first isolate the absolute value expression before I can make any kind of judgment about what this is going to turn out to be. So a lot of people mistakenly added the 3 and 4 out front. Well, that's an issue because I'm really looking at something like this in terms of how I could solve this to isolate the absolute value expression. I would work it the same way that I would work this as far as trying to get the absolute value alone. I can't add the 3 and 4 together. All I can do is minus 3 from both sides. And then I'm left with 4. Absolute value 3x plus 7 is greater than or equal to, that would give me 90, 91, 92, so negative 92. And then when I want to get rid of the 4 out front, I would have to divide both sides by 4, and a negative 92 divided by 4 gives us a negative 23. So I'm left with absolute value of 3x plus 7 is greater than or equal to a negative 23. Now this is when I recommended to you guys, once I do everything that I need to do to get the absolute value expression alone, I'm going to take a look at the symbol and the kind of number that's over here on the right. You had your notes with you to consult, and I said that a bunch, so you guys are probably laughing at me repeating it, but looking at your notes and seeing what it says about this. So greater than or equal to a number. A negative number, well, it clearly won't be equal to, but anything we plug in here will be greater than a negative number. That is why the answer to number 1 was infinite solutions, or all real numbers, means the same thing. Number 2, again, a lot of you jumped straight in, saw a negative number, and made a judgment call. We cannot do that until I have the absolute value expression completely alone on the left side. Another common mistake is some of you added 10 to both sides. Well, that's crazy because if it was like this, we would have never done that. I keep trying to suggest to you to think of the absolute value expression as a variable when you're trying to isolate it. So we would need to divide both sides by this negative 10. And so you've got the absolute value of v plus 2 is equal to a negative divided by negative will give us positive 7. So now I'm looking over here and it says it's equal to a positive number. So I know I can continue working. I'm going to set it equal to the positive version. And then I'm also going to check out what it would be if it was equal to the negative version, meaning 7 units to the left. So the first one, when I minus 2 from both sides, I'm left with v equals 5. The next one, when I minus 2 from both sides, I'm left with v equals negative 9. We just worked an equation, so we have to give our answer in braces here from least to greatest. So it would be negative 9, comma 5. Our next one is just a compound inequality. We did these before we ever even saw absolute value. So I know that the and compound inequality, if I work it out correctly, we learned that on the graph, it should be where they overlap. So there should be a part where there's an overlap of the two answers. So when I finish working it, if I don't get a special case necessarily, I'm going to see if my answers do what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to work them both completely independently. And I am going to take a look at the left. I see I have a's on both sides. I usually move the smaller coefficient, so I'm going to minus 4a from both sides. I'm left with 8 is greater than 7a plus 15. Then I'm going to minus 15 from both sides, and I'm left with negative 7 is greater than 7a. Divide by 7 on both sides. And I'm left with a is less than a negative 1. Now I have to make sure I rewrite this the proper way. A is less than negative 1. When I work the other one, I'm going to get my a's together first. I move the smaller coefficient, so I'm going to add 14a to both sides. I've got 13 is less than or equal to 13 plus, that'll leave us with an 11a. When I try to get the constants together, I'm going to minus 13 from both sides to move this one over. But when I do that, I'm left with 0 is less than or equal to 11a. I just need to continue working, divide both sides by 11, and I get a is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite that a is greater than or equal to 0. So now I'm going to check my answers on the number line to make sure that everything looks right. So I've got -1 and I've got 0. I've got just less than -1, so it's an open circle to the left. I've got greater than or equal to 0, so that's to the right. This is not the way that an AND inequality should be graphed, so clearly something is wrong. There's no overlap, therefore there are no answers, because an AND compound inequality has to be the overlap, so the final answer to this one should have been no solution. The next one is another compound inequality, and it's another AND compound inequality. They just wrote it all together, which we saw was the alternate way for these to be written. So some of you wanted to try and break it apart and work it as two separate ones like the previous problem. We have to make sure that we know how to do that. What it's really saying is -33 is less than or equal to -7n minus 12, and -7n minus 12 is less than -26. So if you tried to break it apart, that would have been the proper way. You've got to take the middle both ways. So if I don't want to do that, if I want to just try and solve it, I guess maybe a little faster or without having to rewrite it, we're going to try the alternate way, where we're just going to move everything from the middle outward until we get the n alone. So I'm going to add 12 to all sides to get rid of that -12 inside of there. And so a -33 plus 12 leaves us with 21, -21, less than or equal to -7n, which is less than -26 plus 12, will leave us with a -14. And then I've got to divide all sides by this -7. So if I'm dividing both sides by a negative, I always have to remember to flip the signs. So these signs need to be flipped. -21 divided by -7 gives me a +3. I'm left with just n in the middle. -14 divided by -7 is a +2. So really this should be written as this way, because we do it least to greatest. Even if you didn't know to do that, when you put it on the number line, it should have helped you. So when we graph our answers, we've got a 2 and we've got a 3. I know that n is greater than, so open circle, greater than 2, and n is less than or equal to 3, so it's going to be going this way. So we have the overlap like we're supposed to. We're supposed to give our answer in interval notation, so we read it from the left to the right. So it starts at 2, which is not included, so it'll get a parentheses. It goes to +3, which is included, so it gets a bracket. This is the way the final answer should have been written in interval notation. Okay, the next question, the ideal diameter of a piece of metal rod is 2.50 inches within an allowable error of at most 0.05 of an inch. Which rod will you pick? So it's just saying that at 2.50, it can be 0.05 this way, less, or 0.05 this way, greater. So if that is the case, then I will just find out what 2.50 minus 0.05 is, and that's going to give me 2.45. And then the other way, it could be 2.55. It says at most, so that means that those could be included. So when I look through my list, I'm looking for anything that's 2.45, 2.55, or anything in between. So 2.45, I got 2.51, that falls between them. 2.44 is too low. 2.48 falls between them. 2.558 is too high. So A and C are correct. The last one is very similar to what you had on the review the previous night. We've got a length of a rectangle, so I'm going to attempt to draw a rectangle as close as I can get. I've got a width that is length that's 20 meters longer than the width. I know both opposite sides are equal. I don't know the width, so I'm going to call them W. The perimeter is found by adding all four sides, so I will combine like terms. W plus W plus W plus W leaves us with 4W. 20 plus 20 leaves us with 40. It just says between 80 and 100, so I'm not going to have equal to signs on my compound inequality. I'm going to solve it like I did the one earlier, just moving everything out from the middle until I'm left with the W. So I'm going to minus 40 from both sides. I'm left with 40 is less than 4W, which is less than 60. Then get rid of the coefficient 4 from the middle so that I can have my final answer of W in the middle. 40 divided by 4 will leave us with 10. 60 divided by 4 will leave us with 15. So 10 and 15 cannot be the answers, but anything in between them can. So 10, 15, 12, that works. 14, that works. 18 is too big. So 12 and 14 should have been the two answers. And that is every question on the quick check from Friday. If you still have questions, let me know.